It's so funny to see because, Parliament's always very polished, but then you see the faded paint at a stop street, and this is now declared the parliamentary precinct. So let's discuss what we can expect to hear from President Cyril Ramaphosa. JJ Tabane is back with us. So, JJ, you see the changes here. Do we expect anything different in the speech this year?
Yeah. No, shouldn't expect anything dramatically different. But what has happened last year, if you look at the last two State of the Nation addresses, the president tried to condense what he wants to talk about into, 4 themes, right? Instead of making a long list. Remember, Zuma had a 12-point plan, at some point, and a 9-point plan. Couldn't remember the 9-point plan at some point talking, and so on. So to avoid that embarrassment, they tried to reduce it to about 4 points. So just if we pick 2 big ones, obviously we're still in the middle of a pandemic. And a lot of people are saying, why are we still having this state of disaster, And it may well be that because the state of a disaster actually expiring in a few days, I think it's expiring on the 15th, the president may take an advantage to do that, but nobody knows. It's just all guesswork. But also, remember that we have set ourselves a target of vaccination, 70% of the population by December. That hasn't happened. By the time it was December, in fact, about only 30 odd, I think we're at 40% now. So he needs to then say, how do we get to 70? So he will spend a bit of time on the COVID-19 management. The second part, obviously, the economy. A lot of people, when Ramaphosa came into being, they say, here's a billionaire, whatever you may think of how he got the billions, right? So we expect that he's going to focus a lot on the economy. And one of the things that he did was to call various summits, job summit, whatever else, but more importantly, the investment summit, right? And that the 4th installment of such a summit is taking place this year. Now, he was going to be looking at whether or not, since the first pledges, right, how much of that has actually been activated. It's one thing to pledge and say, yes, Shahan, I'll give 10 billion, and then you disappear, nothing happens. Yeah. It's different to say, this has started, a road has been built here, infrastructure has been built there. So I think for me, those are the 2 that for now, we will talk about many others, but those 2 are definitely going to be prominent. We're in the middle of a pandemic, so he has to talk about that. Yeah. South Africans are still concerned about it. Economy is where everyone, whether from big business or a small business in Kaelicha, in a hair salon, wants to know whether or not will I be able to operate. And that's where issues such as ESCOM will come in. Issues such as the, water reticulation. We've had the issues of water ahead of the local government elections. Yeah. So those are the 2 big baskets, the health issues and then the economics of going forward as a nation.
All right, I'm going to come back to you in a moment. Apparently, Lindsay Detlinger is where there are some demonstrators. Lindsay?
Hi, Shahan. Again, so we have a group known in Cape Town as the Walking Bus. It was a project of the city of Cape Town. People literally form a human chain to try to get people home safely, and that project has now been cut due to funding. But let's just get a sense from the people themselves as to why they're here. Sir, good afternoon. Why have you come out to demonstrate here at the State of the Nation this afternoon?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Peter Spagamasito. I'm an activist here in South Africa fighting for our farmers and farm workers. We've been attacked and killed in South Africa. I am the first one to meet with the General Begitele on the 3rd August last year, whereby we have formed a national rural committee. But our farmers and farm workers have been attacked every day. Let me tell you something. Our food security here in South Africa, we must protect them. Look what happened in Zimbabwe. The Zimbabweans are here because they are starving in Zimbabwe. But Mr. President, he denied the farm killing. Mr. Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa, I came from East London to here, whereby they attack my car when I arrived here in Cape Town. Why? Who is behind of this farm killing? My vraag is, whom the VS and the antwoord met die dan van die plaasmoorde. Die toekoe, ubani after this farm killing. Mr. President, today, in the SONA 2022, change your tone about the farm killing. We are talking about the food security. I know that some of the leaders, they say that kill the boy, kill the farmer. But we want here in South Africa, we want peace. Whereby we have seen Mr. Tutu is no more. And Mr. Tutu, he must come out here in South Africa. That's why I'm here, to make peace to the South African, black, white, Indian, colored question. I said that, Mr. President, say something about the farm killing.
Thank you very much. So that's an issue on farm killing, Shahan, that want to be raised with the President to pay some attention to. you. So good afternoon. You're from the Walking Bus Project. Tell us why you've come this afternoon to demonstrate here.
Hi, I'm Monabizi Khasmin. I'm the Walking Bus Project. I'm here to, Mr. President, this project was being launched by the previous mayor, Dan Plato, and now when Gordon Lewis took over, he remove us. He don't want this project to continue. We just need our stipend. Since the day one when the schools open, we never see him in schools. We just need him to please renew our contract.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Are you part of the same project? Anybody else?
Yes, we are together.
They're all together here, Shahan, to raise these issues. As you heard, one gentleman speaking about farm killings, wants the president to come out decisively about that, saying it's affecting food security. And another, a more local issue here of the city of Cape Town, a project to help people get home safely, and they're unhappy that that project is being stopped, Shahan.
All right, Lindsay Detlinger keeping a tab on things for us on the ground. And of course, if there are more protests, we'll go there to find out what people are talking about and are concerned about. But I am being told that we are seeing more and more police actually come to the parliamentary precincts. And let's bring you those visuals. And that's, of course, because the precinct is now at City Hall. It's not as fenced off as the normal Parliament precinct. And police have had to erect fencing across several streets here to basically block us in terms of security measures that have been put in place. We heard from the Police Minister, Cele, a little earlier on. He basically gave police their marching orders, telling them to protect South Africans and all those who are in the precinct as well as outside. Whether or not that's going to happen remains to be seen, because they struggle ordinarily. He's also told them that if they are confronted by people, then they should actually confront them as well. So they will use force if necessary. But JJ, let's bring you back into the conversation here as we see the police. And as you hear from people, right?
Yeah.
These are South Africans who believe that the State of the Nation address is about them, which it ultimately is. They want to know how their lives can be improved. And if you listen to what they're saying, projects are not continuing, which means they no longer have jobs. And that's a concern for so many South Africans.
Absolutely. That's why I was saying one of the big themes will have to be the economics. Even if it's tiring, you know, part of why there's always a temptation for various presidents to express themselves on jobs is that people listen until you don't talk about jobs. Otherwise, they just switch off. You say, can you finish with all the flowery things? You can be sure that, you know, he's going to talk about Mandela, the fact that, you know, Mandela is on the balcony there because 32 years ago tomorrow, Mandela's anniversary will come out of prison, and Ramaphosa was there next to him. Was there when he was speaking there. He's going to make a song and dance of it.
Yeah.
It's a historic moment. But that won't last.
Yeah.
Right? That won't last because he must then say, okay, 32 years later, so what? Right? So what are you going to do to make sure that, you know, ordinary people find that what we call the dividend of freedom to also apply to them? Right? So the jobs issue is going to be big. Jacob Zuma promised 5 million jobs when he was inaugurated in 2009. And then before the ink was dry on that SONA, he changed that to say, oh, no, it's 5 million job opportunities. Now, whether it's jobs or job opportunities, 5 million was a bridge too far already. Ramaphosa gave a bit of a rundown, a watered down version of the jobs to say, I think it's in 5 years, there'll be 2 million jobs. Now, soon after he made that promise, COVID hit us and we lost 2 million jobs within a few months, not in 5 years. So in a sense, the promise has a deficit that is bigger than the promise itself as we speak. So instead of 2 million jobs, we have lost 2 million jobs, at least if you look at up to the end of last year.
Yeah.
So it's a tough act, and my suspicion is that he will steer away from promises. Apparently the eNCA has said, please, you are killing us with this thing of promising all sorts of things, particularly when you talk in the millions. So there's an expectation that he won't pin down a number because all the presidents so far have failed to make anything out of those jobs. It's interesting what they were saying about the farmer. Forget that. That's not going to even appear in this speech, honestly.
Yeah. All right, let's go back to Lindsay Detlinger. Lindsay, we're seeing more and more police come to the parliamentary precinct, and obviously we're just a couple of minutes away before 4 o'clock, where we're expecting to see some movement in terms of the guests, and I'm guessing that's why we're seeing more officers.
I think, Shahan, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact as to why we're in this location in the first place today. And that was a major breach of security that has caused untold damage, millions of rand literally going up in smoke of the damage of the parliamentary precinct. And we know there's so many unanswered questions. We've heard very little from the police minister on what led to those breaches. And so we shouldn't really lose sight of the fact about why all of this is happening in the first place. So while you might think what's happening behind me is maybe a knee-jerk reaction or an overreaction, the point being is that security was lax at Parliament, and that is what led to the National Assembly chamber being torched. We know only one suspect is currently being held. He's due to possibly make another short appearance in court tomorrow. And so all of this really, besides the ordinary security measures that normally go with a State of the Nation address, now everybody's looking to see how secure Parliament really can be off the precinct. If they couldn't protect their own precinct, how they protecting a site a couple of hundred meters away. And so the entry point behind me here is the only entry point. And yes, as you point out, more police officers. This is where we expect MPs to be bussed from the parliamentary precinct from a search park there. They won't be able to come down here on foot. They all will be transported here, and that's all part of securing this area and making security as tight as they possibly can. And as I said to you earlier, keeping many of the public, members of the public who we ordinarily would see alongside the fences, alongside the cordons, seeing very little of that this afternoon, partly due to the location of where we're at, and of course, as I'm pointing out, the heightened security measures ahead of tonight's address.
The show that they have to put on, right? Because the indication of the parliamentary fire is that those people who were supposed to be securing it didn't do their jobs if somebody actually managed to get in there and set it alight. And Lindsay, I know you talk about the security measures and how tight it is, but there are loopholes, because this morning when we went to actually get our COVID checks and get scanned through the security system, we were told to just walk over here ourselves. And you know, people were walking on the same street as us, and they could have walked in here as well, except we have the tags. So I'm not too sure about just how tight the security measures are, and I'm guessing the police minister will have to answer to that if he eventually does answer about the parliamentary fire himself. JJ, last word before we actually close this segment on the issue of security and expectations.
Yeah. Well, you know, the issue of security, it's always going to be what we call cloaks and daggers, you know. So the Minister of Police walking about, I mean, she should have come there 5 days ago. Maybe he did. But, you know, to come 3 hours before and walk about is only just it's almost like a show off.
Yeah, it's a show.
Right? So, and what you are saying is correct. I was surprised why we had to now get into cars and be transported here. So that adds to the expense, because actually it's 2 blocks away from Parliament. You could go to that search park and they could just secure the passage and you walk. But anyway, I thought...
and most of those MPs need exercise, by the way.
All right, I won't touch on that. Now, the last thing is, we may not have time to talk again, but the land issue is going to be big. By the way, this was a big issue which was egg on the face of the ANC at the end of last year. Because just before the 2019 elections, I asked the president, are you seriously going to take land without, expropriate land without compensation? It doesn't sound real, because when you talk to Afrikaner farmers, you say to them, oh, don't worry, these people are crazy, nothing is going to happen to your land. When you talk to black constituents, you say, we're going to take the land, the land was stolen. So, just from that incident, where you talk one thing to another constituency and another to show that last year was going to happen, where in fact the ANC didn't work hard enough to try and find a middle ground between the extreme of the EFF, or whatever the EFF wants to do with the land and how they want to do it, and the other extreme of the likes of the DA and Freedom who don't want anything at all to be touched on the land. This sort of middle path is apparently going to be resolved by the expropriation. So you're expecting to make song and dance of that to almost redeem himself, because in a sense he fooled the public ahead of the election that anything serious or dramatic was going to happen on the land. The reality is the ANC was never serious about that. In fact, I have it on good authority that the caucus of the ANC in Parliament went ahead of itself to support what the EFF tabled as a motion, whereas the Tule House said, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
You know. So this is what we are talking about, a party that's divided, and that's part of the context within which the president is addressing us tonight. That the party that is divided, you know, and a conference that's coming up at the end of the day may boot him out of office or whatever else. So quite a tough year ahead, Chan.
Yeah. All right, thanks so much for that. We'll be talking to you throughout the afternoon and evening here on eNCA. And Bradan, what? Just under 4 hours, 3 hours, and a couple of more minutes before the president actually speaks to the nation. And we're all going to bring you rolling coverage from 4 o'clock. Sally Badet, Tula Sizwe Similane, myself, JJ Tabane, Lindsay Detlinger, all out. We're going to be speaking to the relevant people to make sure that we get answers before the president even addresses the nation at 7 o'clock.